House Rule Number 1. All participants will be muted in the entirety of the conference, except the moderator and the speaker or whoever is given the floor by the moderator. House Rule Number 2. Attendees may opt to turn off their videos. House Rule Number 3. Please observe proper chat etiquette. A. Only post questions or comments relevant to the topic. B. Avoid using capital letters and vulgar words. House Rule Number 4. When listening to the research presentation, please keep your microphone in mute mode to avoid unnecessary sounds that may disturb the ongoing presentations. House Rule Number 5. Kindly send your questions, comments, suggestions via chat publicly, to everyone. Moderators and speakers will attend to your queries during the open forum. House Rule Number 6. A certificate of participation will only be given to those, 1. Who were able to register via Zoom, and 2. Will submit an evaluation form at the end of the conference. Wait for the moderator's instructions on how to claim your certificate. Thank you.
To be a trial and error. With this, research and innovations must take place, for it could give an antidote to the unfamiliarities brought by the present COVID-19 pandemic. With our hunger for knowledge, we are all here attending this webinar to continuously seek knowledge on how to devise and innovate different teaching strategies to make sure
Recording in progress.
In this new normal of teaching and learning, everything seems to be a trial and error. With this, research and innovations must take place, for it could give an antidote to the unfamiliarities brought by the present COVID-19 pandemic. With our hunger for knowledge, all of us are here attending this webinar to continuously seek knowledge on how to innovate and devise different teaching strategies to make sure that no students shall be left behind. To our participants and invited speakers, I am your host for today, Carlos Vinuelas Jr. from DepEd Legazpi City Division. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the second day of the International Conference on Education, Innovations, and Community Development with the theme Strengthening Connections and Collaborations Amidst the Pandemic. I hope that today's session will be filled with great learning and inspiration that you can use in your respective workplace. And to give a short recap, the first day of the conference was hosted by our eloquent moderator, Pamela Garcia of Ligao National High School. It was also started by an interfaith prayer, followed by the Philippine National Anthem. Dr. Arnulfo M. Mascareñas, the president of Bicol University, gave his opening remarks as he stressed the importance of promoting world-class education through research and development. His presence on the first day of the conference had been a source of power and strength to our participants to continuously upgrading and continuing professional growth, even amid the pandemic. The participants and invited speakers were also introduced by Dr. Luis O. Amano, the Vice President of Research, Development and Extension of the Bicol University. Indeed, the first day of the conference was truly blessed for having great participants across the globe. Dr. Rebecca Rosario O. Bercasio, the Director of Bicol University Center of Teaching Excellence, gave the overview and mechanics of the conference. Then, it was followed by a series of plenary talks, research presentations, and open forum. The first plenary talk, titled Connecting with Learners in a Multicultural Setting, was given by Mr. Dimitris Benitez from the New Oriental College, Beijing, China. And the second plenary talk, titled Fostering Gender Equality through EFL Teaching During the Pandemic, was given by Ms. Fatoni Veniti from the University of Athens. And the research presentations were given by our very able and competent researchers who were meticulously selected by these organizers. And the research presenters were under the following category. First, pedagogy and pandemic. Second, curriculum and innovation, and educational policy and management. With the participations of our online viewers from FB Live and Zoom, the conference was ended with a smile, not just from the speakers, but also from our beloved research enthusiasts, students, teachers, and leaders. And also we have other members of the community. And to give an overview of today's session, we will have 4 plenary talks, 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, to be given by our 4 invited speakers abroad. And every after the plenary talk, we are going to have an open forum. So if you have questions about the talk, you can just reserve it, and later on you can type it in the comment section, or you can send it in a private chat in the Zoom room. And before we proceed to our first plenary talk, let me just give a few reminders to all our participants that the evaluation link and the attendance are already sent in the FB Live and Zoom meeting. And may we request everybody to stay with us all throughout the conference. And if you were not admitted in the Zoom room, you don't have to worry, because we are also live on Facebook. Just search the page of Bicol University. And just to check if you're still with me, I just want you to give your comments or thoughts or any suggestions about this conference by typing it in the comment section or in the chat box in the Zoom room. And I would like to give shout out to our viewers across the globe. So we have from Brazil. Hello from Brazil, from the Philippines to Brazil. And we also have viewers from New Delhi, India. And we also have from University of Athens. And we also have from Beijing, China, from New Oriental College. I hope you enjoy watching with us, and I hope you can also learn from this conference. And we also have from Masbate Division. Hello to my friends in Masbate. And we also have from Oriental Mindoro. We also have from Camarines Norte. And we also have from Tarlac Agricultural University. And we also have from Surigao del Sur Division. And we also have DepEd Bataan. And we also have from Bukidnon Central University. So thank you for spending your time with us. And as of now, we have 250 participants in the Zoom room. And we also have approximately 300 viewers in our FB Live. So I hope you stay with us. And you can also comment your thoughts about this conference. And we also have from the Zoom room, good morning, everyone watching from San Vicente Elementary School, Riga West District from the School Division of Catanduanes. And we also have from Davao del Norte State College, Panabo, Davao del Norte. Hello there. So I hope you enjoy listening and watching in this conference. Okay, so we have a lot of participants in the Zoom room, and then we also have, okay, yes, I'm reading all your comments. So, hello from Pangasinan State University. And we also have from Bulacan, Bulacan State University. And we have from Ateneo de Naga. Okay, so thank you so much, guys, for your responses. I can now see that all of us are ready to listen to our speaker. So let us welcome our first plenary speaker, Dr. Gasparim Ramallo de Souza, as he talks about the challenges and good practices in teaching and learning during the pandemic, a closer look at Brazil. Dr. Gasparim Ramallo de Souza holds a PhD in Language Studies from Federal Technological Central of Minas Gerais, a master's degree in Linguistic Studies, an expert in English language teaching, a specialist in special and inclusive education. Currently, he is an adjunct professor of the Department of Language Studies at the Federal State University of Labras. He is a member of the Brazilian Association of Black Researchers and the Zimba Gava African Studies Group, and a member of editorial board of the Interdisciplinary Journal on Language Studies, originating from the Interdisciplinary Research Group on Language Study, in which he also participates. He currently participates as a representative of equity, diversity, and inclusion. In addition, he served as pedagogical coordinator of the English Without Borders program of the Federal University of Labras, Language Teaching Center, and teaching English in public schools for more than 10 years. His main research interests are learning styles, multiple intelligences, inclusion, complexity, critical literacy, language policies, ethnic racial relations, and training of English teachers for public school. So friends, please help me welcome our first resource person, Dr. Gasparim Ramallo de Souza. Let's give him a virtual applause, please.
Hello, everyone. Good morning from Philippines and good evening in Brazil. And welcome to the International Conference on Education Innovations and Community Development 2021. And in this presentation, I will talk about challenges and good practices in teaching, learning, and research during the pandemic, a closer look at Brazil. I am Dr. Gasparim Ramallo de Souza, and on the next slide, I will talk a little bit more about me as a researcher. So first of all, how will this presentation will be conducted? And I will talk first about me as a speaker. I will talk about the pandemic in Brazil so that you can have a contextualization. I will talk about the challenges in teaching, learning, and extension, considering the federal universities in Brazil. And considering the pandemic, I will talk about the good practices carried out among the federal universities in Brazil. and we will reflect about some perspectives for education, innovation, and for community development, considering these good practices that I'm going to show you. And as a conclusion, we will reflect in general about what we can learn from Brazil. First of all, about the speaker, I'm talking about me. My name is Gasparin Ramalho. So I hold a PhD in language studies, and I have a master's degree in linguistic studies as well. And I'm specialized in English language teaching and special and inclusive education. And I also have a degree in English by one of the federal universities here in Brazil. Nowadays, I work as an associate professor for the Department of Language Studies at the Federal University of Lavras, which is, and also, as it is clear here, a federal university in the southern of Brazil. And I work as a member of the Brazilian Association of Black Researchers, and I participate in another group of studies called Zimbagaba, which is an African studies group. And considering the university where I work, the Federal University of Lavras, I also work as a representative of equity, diversity, and inclusion. And considering my research interests, I have been working with learning styles, multiple intelligences, inclusion, complexity, critical literacy, language policies, ethnic racial relations, and English teachers' education for public schools. So I do think it is important to present myself as a researcher so that you can understand a little bit about my background as a researcher, considering all the opportunities that I have been provided as an undergraduate student, as a postgraduate student, and this explains a lot about how I value education and how I value the contribution from the public universities for education, for innovation, for community development. So that's why I think this contextualization about me is also important. Considering the pandemic in Brazil, so that you can have an idea about what has been going on, the first case of coronavirus in our country was reported on February 26th in 2020. So since then, we have had, unfortunately, more than 21 million cases. And unfortunately, more than 600,000 people have lost their lives. And thanks God, we have had more than 20 million people who have recovered. And since the pandemic has begun, and all over the world, we have had many problems and significant human costs. In Brazil, as you have seen, considering the previous slide, it wasn't different. And it's important to mention that when we think about the pandemic in Brazil, we are talking about the country that is considered to be the largest country in South America and the fifth country in the world, considering how large it is. And also considering population, Brazil has the sixth largest population. So the challenges in this big country, they are noteworthy and they kind of point lots of problems that can be repeated all over the world and in South America, in other continents as well. So in August 2020, the country had the second largest number of infected people in the world, which was something that was troublesome, that was threatening all the countries around us. And as I said, it could be something pointing at a problem for the rest of the world. And considering the preliminary studies that were carried out, they indicated that families with incomes up to 2 times the minimum wage, they would be the most impacted. And unfortunately, that prediction has been confirmed. So with income losses 20% higher than average Brazilian families. So they definitely lost their means of life. And this was a study also confirmed by Arraes, Scorcioli, and Medina. As you can see, it's very recent. They have been studying the pandemic context in Brazil since the last year. So in 2021, I mean, so they organized this article, and most of the information that I will provide you with during this presentation, and I will present some results that were shown by these three authors, as you can see here, Arraes, Scorcioli, Medina. And as we were talking about the challenges for the pandemic situation in Brazil, we need to focus on education. In June 2020, the Global Education Monitoring Report warned that 258 million children and young people worldwide did not have access to education in the first months of the pandemic. Specifically in Brazil, considering a report called Todos pela Educação, which means like everyone for education, inclusion in education, this report pointed out that the pandemic will generate significant learning losses and should increase school dropout rates and education inequalities. So, as I said, considering the large population we have got here and considering its extension, so the consequences for education, as Brazil is a very diverse country, these consequences would be very serious. So lots of people without access to internet, without access to digital literacy, people that could not move around, people that could not be inside their houses. They could not be at home in safety, as we have a big population, so we have many people living together in the same place, so they could not go to school. So this situation got even worse. So these are just some examples of educational inequalities. People living in a house with more than 3, 4, 5 people, depending on the same internet connection, using the same computer. So how could they be able to learn at home? So this is one example of educational inequalities. Brazil is part of low and medium low income countries, among which, observe, 30% did not have policies to support students during the period when schools were closing to contain the advancement of the new coronavirus. And they could not provide accessibility to new technologies to reduce the digital exclusion that I was talking about. So 4 out of 10 students, equivalent to 42%, they do not have adequate equipment and conditions to access distance education. And it's important to emphasize that old problems got worse due to the pandemic outbreak and political tensions. In a moment when most of the world, I would say, all the countries all over the world, they were facing a pandemic outbreak, in Brazil, we still had something terrible, which was the political tension because of a government that did not invest in education, that was trying to decrease investment in education. So old problems like the lack of investment in education, many people deprived socially, economically, people excluded in digital aspects. And we have other problems, for example, like students who were disabled, that they were not correctly assisted before the pandemic, so they started again to be like neglected during the pandemic outbreak as well. So as I mentioned before, people with a very, very low income, now they needed to survive with the loss of income in a very hard moment again. So only after several months of the pandemic outbreak that the government, for example, because of the pressure from the Congress, started to create some kind of financial help for people. But even though the money provided for these poor people, it was not enough for them to survive. So most of them, they were still dying or starving. So that you can understand better the impacts of the pandemic in education, as you can observe in this infographic, on the top, you can read the piece of information. Brazil has almost 180,000 basic education schools. 66 percent of schools in the municipal network have internet. But it's important to mention that when we say that they have internet, it doesn't mean that it is the suitable internet so that students and teachers may work, teach, and learn. Okay, so the quality, it has to be also questioned. And 4 million students dropped out of school in 2020. Observe 4 million students. In 2020, there were 26.7 million high school enrollments. 42% of students do not have adequate equipment conditions to access decent education. And remember, this number should be also questioned because when we say 42% of students, we also have students that are not enrolled, students that were not reached for the surveys, for the academic investigations. So this number tends to be higher. Think about indigenous students, for example, or all the students that were not even enrolled so that they could not be, for example, asked whether they had internet connection or not. And on the bottom of this infographic, as you can read, 258 million children and young people did not have access to education worldwide. So, again, as Brazil is a very large country, we have a big part of responsibility considering this number. We have a big slice of this terrible cake. So, considering this situation, and I was talking about like municipal, the elementary schools, what's the role of the universities, considering the social problems, the economical problems, and especially the educational problems that basic schools were facing in Brazil? And the first thing that I need to tell you is that there are 69 federal universities in Brazil and distributed and all over the 26 states in Brazil. And around 20 of those 69 federal universities, they are considered to be part of the top 1,000 universities in the world, considering Times Higher Education and Research 2022. So it means that Brazil definitely plays a very important role in terms of education, innovation, community development, and all over the world, right? So 20 out of 69, it is a very, very considerable number. And as we have very good universities, we do have a responsibility considering all the problems that we have faced in our country. And even our Brazilian federal constitution and restates the importance of the universities as they should keep or they must keep the indissociability between teaching, research, and extension, which means that we should work hard not only on teaching but researching and extending, offering to the community solutions considering what we teach and what we research. And according to the Education Guidelines Act that we have in Brazil, which is a very strong law that we have had since the 90s, all the universities should stimulate knowledge of the problems of the present world, in particular national and regional ones, provide specialized services to the community, and establish with it a relationship of reciprocity. So this fragment of this act does emphasize the role that universities have in stimulating knowledge of the problems of the present world and providing specialized services. So again, it is clear the way that universities should be engaged with teaching, learning, research, extension, at the same time reflecting upon everything that we see not only in our country but in the world. And the communities, they should be developed according to this knowledge which is produced in these universities. So we have a big responsibility. We have much work to do. So from this slide on, I will show you some good practices carried out among the federal universities in Brazil. So that's why the title of the slide is Because and Beyond the Pandemic. And I'm very glad to say that many universities in Brazil, actually almost all of them, they have developed some kind of practice, some attitude done in previous years. So many universities, they had to struggle to survive. Many universities in Brazil, especially the federal ones, they were kind of surviving with almost less than 50% of the receipt, the budget they had, I mean. So they need to struggle to upgrade teaching learning during the pandemic, focusing on remote learning through institutional courses offered on assessment, digital technologies, learning styles, diversity, mental health, so that we could face this moment that was challenging all of us. And many universities, like the one that I work for, the Federal University of Lavras, as we say, UFLA, at UFLA, for example, lots of courses about assessment, digital technologies, new strategies for teaching and learning. They were designed to help professors to get more prepared to face this moment. And in order to do so, I'm mentioning my university as a very good example because Lavras, or the University of Lavras, made a partnership with Coursera. Coursera is a very famous platform worldwide offering courses from the renowned universities all over the world. And lots of courses were offered in this platform called Coursera. So I myself, for example, could benefit from this, taking lots of courses and distance learning courses that probably I would not be able to take in a normal situation, and especially totally for free. So this is something very good that happened in my university and in many universities, I mean federal ones in Brazil, in order to upgrade teaching learning. And most of the universities, they were struggling to extend to their communities some outcomes from the researches carried out. And that's what I'm going to show you in the next slides. Some good examples of practices that were carried out among the federal universities in Brazil and how they were able to extend to their communities part of this knowledge, especially in terms of the pandemic, because as universities they need to answer this demand from the real world, the present world's problems like the pandemic and its consequences. So they need to organize all the research groups and all the researches carried out by professors inside universities. So for example, here, as you can see the icon, the group of people, so this is the research group. We have one group of research, the first one that appears here. It is about research and development of technologies for pedagogical innovation. The second one here, it is about intelligent systems or the Internet of Things, how to innovate considering product services based on new technologies. And the third one here is about neglected diseases. And on the second part here, as you can see, this icon, we have some research areas like social management and social sciences, bioengineering applied to human rehab, and the systems encompassed. Okay, which means basically what I've told you, considering innovation technologies and services and intelligent systems. So, in organize, as I said, and to provide to all people inside and outside the university information about the knowledge that was being carried out as a study this year. And in this fragment called Table 2, you can see the quantity of actions developed by Brazilian federal universities organized by type. Of course, we won't be able to read all of them, but so that you can understand basically what we have in this table. So in the first column here, It is called action. So, and a list of actions, okay, and then conducted by the federal universities. The total of these actions, considering the national context. And here, these acronyms that you can see, they are the universities and their names. For example, the first one here, Federal Public Universities, UFRJ, in Portuguese we say UFRJ. So it is a university in Rio de Janeiro, a very famous city in Brazil, in the southern. The next one, UFRGS, we say URGS in Brazil, it is in the south. And the other one, UFMG, or in English you would say just UFMG, it is in the southern. Okay, so these, just for us to have an idea, we'll focus on these three universities. So considering the first one, okay, UFRJ, so beds in university hospitals, okay, so 164. Considering the national context, more than 3,000 beds in university hospitals. So this was their contribution for the pandemic in Brazil, and considering their research too. And the second university, 93, UFMG, as you can see, and more than 800 research studies conducted. So during the pandemic, so UFRJ, the first university here, 15, and the second university, 50, UFMG, more than 100 studies just about, just about coronavirus. Considering the community, how they help the community, the production of hand sanitizers. The first university, at least 3 activities about it, or 3 groups, 2 in the second university and 2 in the second. Production of PPEs, which means like the personal protection equipment. So in all the universities, you will see that they were creating this personal protection equipment. Coronavirus testing, okay, I will not read everything, but just so that you can take a look. So all the universities, they were working with coronavirus testing, educational campaigns, solidarity actions, municipal government partnerships, and state government partnerships or other relevant actions. And in this table number 3, we have a sampling of the actions carried out. And I think it's going to be clear for you, considering each university, what the program was, how its management support how happened, and how the studies were conducted. So I think that these slides, they will be available for you, and I can also send it to all of you in case you want it. You will see the description clearly of what has happened. So the first university, one example of program. So they had partnerships with over 30 civil organizations to organize campaigns, collecting essential products, and organizing primary healthcare teams in the communities, training of primary healthcare teams in communities, the management support. So they created plans of action to combat coronavirus in communities, especially slums, which are very poor areas in Brazil. They created a website for real-time monitoring of coronavirus. And this one thing that has been done by many universities, as all the community could not only see through the news the situation about coronavirus in our country, but also through the website developed by the universities. These studies. So these programs and this management support, they were directly connected with these studies. So analysis on the impact of coronavirus pandemic on the quality of life of women living in areas of social vulnerability. Remember, so considering this study, it's very important to mention how it addresses people that are very, very deprived in many ways, especially people who have been historically affected by inequalities, like Black people in this situation, the quality of life, women living in areas of social vulnerability. Okay, and we have other programs that also addresses, or studies that also addresses people in situation of inequality. Okay, so the SAC University, just for us to have an idea, the Development of business design alternatives for small businesses to ensure the continuity of their activities during the pandemic. The training of a therapeutic group that provides emotional support to public school teachers. Production and donation of 100,000 facial protectors for health professionals and other essential services. Development of the coronavirus website, similar to the first one, which is a tool to support the visual analysis of coronavirus data. And the study conducted, it was based on the development of a test to detect antibodies to coronavirus, the evaluation of the efficacy and safety in using plants in ethnopharmacological management of viral respiratory infections, the development of a prototype of an N95 mask decontamination chamber that uses ultraviolet radiation and allows the equipment to be reused, and a project mapping the mass coronavirus testing in Betim, which is a city close to the capital of the state, and in Minas Gerais. Oh, so sorry, this number one, it refers to this third university, UFMG or UFMG, okay? And by the way, so I'm going to start reading UFMG right now. So in this university, which is very close to our university here in Lavras, the city where I am, where my university, the Federal University of Lavra, is located, this university, so they created assistance with gestation, delivery, and birth of the indigenous Pataxó, Machacali, and Chacriabá, so they are indigenous groups. Okay, so in another group victim of coronavirus in Brazil, and another group that has been victim of inequality, socially, economically, politically speaking. So they created they organized a distribution of material for these indigenous groups. So thinking about the extension of the knowledge for this community. And they also created a mathematical mode to evaluate the percentage of coronavirus under reporting of cases in Brazil. And as I read before, they mapped the mass coronavirus testing in Betim, which is a big city close to the capital, considering where this university is located. So they were very engaged with the communities around them too. Okay, so these are just examples of programs. As I mentioned, these slides will be available for you so that you can read about these universities. I didn't mention this before, but these universities that you can read here, they were selected especially because they are distributed along the 5 regions of Brazil. So you can read about each one of them individually and carefully. So, what are some reflections and perspectives for education, thinking about the studies carried out by these universities, considering these good practices? Lessons that are learned and reassessed by the pandemic context. So, considering what these universities have been doing as examples of good practices, the first thing that we need to think of is education needs to be considered a social practice. And what's the purpose of education if not reflecting critically on the local or the global issues and offer solutions for decreasing inequalities, like the examples, right? Thinking about we people, thinking about cities that are located close to these universities. Another reflection, and as I mentioned before, the digital literacy is still an issue, and in many countries and in Brazil as well. So the digital literacies and access to new technologies, they still represent a gap between education. So we need to remember that when we think about innovations in education, when we think about new perspectives for education, we tend to think that new technologies are available. They aren't. They're not available to everybody. And considering distance learning, remote learning, and presential learning, they should not be mistaken. They need to be considered individually as they have their specificities. So when we design a course for distance learning, we have a different conception of teaching learning. We have a different conception of assessment. We have a different conception of designing tasks, materials for teaching and learning. And it's the same for remote learning and presential learning. So unfortunately, because of the pandemic, many Even researchers, they tried to just transport one conception from one context of learning to the other, but they are not the same thing, and their specificities they should be taken into account. On the other thing, education is a dynamic, dialogical, and collaborative process. So universities they could never study anything just considering that they are like a privileged space of knowledge better than the rest of the world and comparison to their communities. No, teachers, professors, students, they learn from each other as new challenges take place, especially listen to their communities. And considering innovation, and many people think that innovation tends to be something like, oh, outstanding, amazing, unbelievable. Sometimes even very simple things carry the idea of innovation because innovation is also about new policies for education, teaching, learning, and research. As we face a pandemic, new policies for teaching, for learning, for research, they were developed. And I would say that in Brazil, for example, the innovation is also reacting to the way that the government was trying to decrease the investment in education and attacking the federal universities and attacking professors, researchers with and a stand of denying the pandemic itself. Unfortunately, Brazil became like a joke internationally because of the way that our governor, especially the president, was denying the pandemic. So the innovation also took place in our country, considering the way that researchers, teachers, students, professors, and many other social groups they were fighting for their rights and looking for and suggesting new policies for education, teaching, learning, research, reacting against this denial of the pandemic, even the government itself. And innovation can also be achieved when universities collaboratively develop new conceptions, technologies, products, or services for their communities, as the examples that I showed you. Innovation can also be represented by the level of protagonism, leadership, and entrepreneurship displayed by the academic community. So, considering these universities, right, that I mentioned, like in the south, in the southern of Brazil, or in the north, so many researchers and students they have to be protagonists, like going to hospitals, helping other people, thinking about solutions for education, creating materials, designing new products. So these entrepreneurships, leadership should also be considered as innovation. Sometimes a very silent innovation for other people. They are almost invisible, but they are there. If doctors can work in a hospital, nurses, we have lots of people working on the backstage, innovating all the time. So we think about these professions like doctors, nurses, when we think about pandemic, and we forget about the teachers, the professors, the researchers that have created the vaccines, that have studied so that we could develop the vaccines. This is pretty much about innovation. And considering the community development, extension needs to be considered as a mandatory practice for the university as they are maintained by the community. So we should be aware of the money, of the expectations, of the hope invested upon us, considering that extension is not something that we do if we have time as a third activity in the university. So the first one is teaching, learning, and research, and the third one, extension. No, there is no such a hierarchy. So extension is a mandatory practice. It's also important as the other things we do in the university. So it's not inferior to teaching and research. It is a clear evidence of the university's social role and knowledge outcome. I started this presentation talking about the social role and this mandatory practice, considering the knowledge outcome. And extension articulates and generates public policies which may contribute for the country development. So remember, what we offer to the community considering extension, it also shows public policies that need to be increased, that need to be supported, that need to be shown. right? And it contributes for social and economical growth of the country. So, I don't like the word conclusion. I think that everything is just the beginning of another thought. So, what we can learn from Brazil, the actions developed by the universities, they had a significant impact in mitigating the effects of the pandemic in Brazil. And the various projects focused on combating the spread of coronavirus in socially vulnerable communities have been just as vital as the research projects for the development of vaccines and therapies. Despite current political threats to the existence of Brazilian public federal universities, the volume of their actions, the diversity of populations they assisted, and the products they delivered to Brazilian society indicate they are resilient and socially engaged. So basically, I'm very proud to say that most of the federal universities in Brazil, they were very committed with teaching, learning, to research, and to extension. And they definitely did a collaborative work with their communities where they are inserted in the sense of creating new strategies and new conceptions of knowledge facing the pandemic. So these are some references. You can click on the links. Most of them you can click on a flag and they will be translated into English. There are some links here so that you can know more about the universities in Brazil in case you want to join us study here too. And the articles that I mostly relied on. And we're going to have a moment so that you can ask your questions. I hope we can interact. I really would like to hear from you what you would like to know more, considering this short time we had to interact. So I'll be waiting for you in this moment of interaction. And thank you very much. In case you have any questions, please feel free, okay, to contact me through this email, gasparin.souza@ufla.br, okay, BR. So thank you very much. And considering Filipino language, salamat po.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gasparin. So let's give him a resounding virtual applause, please. So it's so nice to see you again, Dr. Gasparin. And before we proceed to entertaining questions from our participants, I just want to give the salient takeaways from your talk, since I have been listening to your discussion and I have come up with the following takeaways. First, in Brazil, the school curriculum follows three standards. The first one is teaching, number two is research, and number three is extension. And number two, it is crucial that we listen from the feedbacks of students, teachers, community, experts, administrators, and other stakeholders to improve the curriculum. The same thing with the Brazilian education. That's one of their practices, listening to the stakeholders on how to improve the education that would actually benefit our students. And the next one, from Brazil, there's a special curriculum in teaching English as offered to prepare students for globalization. And the next one, curriculum is also based on research findings. That is why from the actions carried out by the Federal University, they have programs, management support, and studies. So meaning to say, there is analysis before they come up with a certain solution to a problem. And the last one from Dr. Gasparin, competencies are firmly aligned with the 21st century skills that all students must develop to lead fulfilling and productive lives as global citizens, especially in this time of the pandemic. It is indeed evident from the Brazilian education that even amidst the pandemic, there is innovation and there is a continuously, what do we call this? Continuously seek for knowledge for our students. And I guess we have questions from our participants. So before I entertain it, I just want to ask Dr. Gasparim, how did you cope with the difficulties in education brought by the pandemic? So let me know if in Brazil you are already having face-to-face classes. Dr. Gasparim, yes?
So good evening from Brazil. Good morning, Philippines. Can you all hear me?
Yes, loud and clear, Dr. Gasparim.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to talk to all of you. Thank you so much, Mr. Carlos Nunes, Mr. Professor Rebecca Bercasio, and thank you, Sarah Lorena, for the invitation to be here. Thank you so much. Considering the first question, and we have faced lots of problems, so we are still trying to recover from the pandemics. So some basic schools and elementary schools, they are starting to have face-to-face classes, state schools as well, but most of the universities, they have not returned to face-to-face classes yet. So some practical courses, like medicine and other courses, they started to have face-to-face class in the end of September. So probably on the beginning of the next year, probably most of the courses will be back to face-to-face classes. So we are still struggling.
Yes. So it is indeed like in any other countries, the education in Brazil is also affected by the pandemic. Like in the Philippines, we're having a hard time actually, and it's uncertain for us if we're going to have face-to-face classes. But Dr. Gasparin, I just want to ask, what piece of advice can you give for us Filipinos in reconsidering the face-to-face classes? So what are the considerations that you take for a school to have a face-to-face class?
Yes, the thing is that when we think about face-to-face classes, we should really think about what our conception of education is. So for the moment, the first thing is to think about it. Is it really necessary for this moment? So considering the situation of the country itself, what Philippines is going through, so shouldn't we maybe postpone this face-to-face class? So in case it is really necessary, so I do think that all the schools, especially the universities, they should establish a very solid and trustable protocol of safety. So you should have all the rules established, considering every context of teaching and according to the World Health Organization recommendations. Okay. So these protocols, they should be constructed with the schools and the university itself.
Yes, absolutely, you are right. So meaning to say, there must be an analysis of the situation and there should be a research so that we could know what are the priorities in opening classes in the Philippines. And Sir Gasper, we have another question from Anafe Janabil. So, hello, Dr. Gasparim. As far as innovation is concerned, can you suggest or give us a good practice or any of innovation in terms of distance learning, especially in a remote or far-flung area amidst the situation we are experiencing now? So it's like best practice or innovation fit for the distance learning, because we are having this modular distance learning in the Philippines, Dr. Gasper. So we do not actually have face-to-face classes, or sometimes we have this online consultation, but it's not actually for a formal class.
Okay, so first of all, I really would like to apologize for my internet connection, which is unstable. So in case you cannot hear me well because of my internet connection issues, I will be pleased to type my answers as well. So considering the question about an innovation in terms of distance learning, the first thing is about active methodologies of teaching and learning. What I mean by active methodologies is pretty much creating situations in which the students are protagonists. So they should have autonomy and independence of learning. So to innovate, teachers should be prepared and they should be able to design activities in which the students can research before the class, or situations or tasks in which students are supposed to work asynchronously or distance learning situation to solve real problems. So we should think about tasks that enable students to think and work asynchronously. So the active methodologies, they might help a lot. One example of active methodology is problem solving. So creating or designing tasks with problem solving. Another situation is the flipped classroom, in which the students prepare for the classroom before guidelines for the class itself. So the teachers, they do need to be very open-minded in this moment in order to innovate, helping the students to be more autonomous, to work better.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Dr. Gasper. So it's like the concept of flexible learning. And we also have to assess the students' needs, styles, and interests. The same thing with the concept of constructive alignment. We did not actually focus not only on the competency, but also on the available resources of our students. Because in the Philippines, as I observed, teachers somehow would have this too much ideas on how to make the classroom beautiful. And that's great. But sometimes we have to consider the situation of our students. Like when we use of ICT in teaching, we have to ask ourselves, do our students have cell phones, good internet connection? And by that, we can devise and innovate different learning materials fit for our students. So thank you so much, Dr. Gasparin. So indeed, worksheets work best for students, especially in this time of the pandemic. And if you are following the modular distance learning. Okay, so while waiting for other questions from the Zoom room and FB Live, I remember Dr. Gasparin the last time we met during our immersion program with Sir Saturn Macasinag. And actually, Sir Saturn Macasinag has a question for you. He talks about the fake news. Since fake news is really rampant in this era, what are the steps of your university so that you can correct and promote ethics on the use of social media?
Okay, thank you, Saturn. Thank you so much. The first thing that we started working with is on websites that might be accessed by the population to have access to updated information about coronavirus. So these websites created by the universities, they were trustable, and all the population could have access to serious, solid, transparent information. So one of the most important things that most of the federal universities in Brazil have done is to create these websites to fight the fake news. So almost all the universities in their websites, you can access one link specifically about coronavirus, for example. What is a myth? What is fake? What is true? So we have specific websites in universities where people can check information.
Okay, that's nice. So at least the university is also providing websites for our students. But let me know, Dr. Gasparin, do you integrate the concept of fighting fake news in your lessons?
I'm so sorry, Mr. Carlos. Could you repeat the question again, please?
I'm asking Dr. Gasparin if you integrate the concept of fighting the fake news in your lessons.
Absolutely. One thing that I cover in my classes is something called critical literacy. So critical literacy relies pretty much on the idea of questioning, taking a stand. So taking a stand against fake news, it's very important in any context, especially in this pandemic context when so many people are dying, and we know that the lack of information also contributes for many people's death. So critical literacy is one strategy of teaching as we empower people to react against social inequalities and fake news. They contribute for the increase of inequalities. This is the point that I'm trying to make.
Okay, the concept of critical literacy. So the teacher should really know how to ask questions. So you have to be careful when you ask questions. It should be from first level going to the highest level, means to higher order thinking skills. So we can also adapt that teachers, Filipino teachers, on how to promote critical literacy. Even amid the pandemic, we are using the modular approach to teaching. We can still ask questions. But remember that it should be relevant. And we also have a question, Dr. Gasparin from Grecia de Mesa. So what particular intervention or activities do your school offer to your students and teachers facing challenges as you go along in online distance learning due to the COVID-19 pandemic? So it's like one specific intervention.
Okay, so most of our activities, they are created in order to ask students to recover first what they have learned from the previous lesson, why this lesson is important for them at the moment, products or outcomes that might be generated by the lesson, and especially what goals should be achieved throughout the lessons. So most of the intervention activities that we create in our university, they rely on problem-solving situations. So they need to access knowledge using different languages, different medias. So they need to think how they can integrate the content they are taking at their courses and how they can extend that considering an innovation, considering a product. So most of the professors at the university, they are trying to create activities based on the problems that the students may solve as they recap some information they have studied, or how they can solve problems considering information that they might get from different sources.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Gasparin. Indeed, exposing students to different social issues could actually help in promoting the concept of problem solving in teaching. And we have last question, Dr. Gasparin, from April Christian de Leon. He asked, as an innovator, is it possible to go back to the old practices? Or would it be better to continue the practices or innovations that we have taken as part of the new normal?
Okay, so we should always remember that this kind of normal has never existed. People all over the world, they were actually not learning properly because of many inequalities. So access to technology, as I mentioned, is still a problem. It was a problem before. So what we should learn from this moment, and that we should take, or at least make it even better, to upgrade after the pandemic, is how we are using new technologies and how we should fight so that other people have access to digital literacies. One thing that we should always learn from this pandemic, and we should also transfer to what is called new normal, okay, is the way that we interact with our students. It should be more dynamic. and we should learn how to listen, because we are taught how to speak, but we should be taught on how to listen to our students much more than before.
Okay, so thank you so much, Dr. Gasper. I think that would be the last question. And I just want to highlight what you said. So it's like if you think that the old practice could still be beneficial today, you can still use it. But one thing is for sure, we have to be adaptive with the new trends in learning and teaching. After all, our educational system is also changing, and I guess our pedagogical approach must also change. That should be fit for our students. And at this juncture, Dr. Gaspari, we are happy to give you the certificate of commendation. So may I request the certificate of commendation to our speaker? So we're going to give the certificate of commendation that reads Republic of the Philippines, Bicol University, Bicol Graduate School Center for Teaching Excellence, Extension Management Division, Office of the Vice President for Research Development and Extension, Legazpi City. The certificate of commendation is awarded to Dr. Gasparim Ramalho de Souza from the Federal University of Lavras, Brazil, in recognition of his noteworthy participation as plenary speaker on the topic Challenges and Good Practices in Teaching, Learning, and Research during the Pandemic. A closer look at Brazil during the 2021 International Conference on Education, Innovations, and Community Development, held on October 28 to 30, 2021 via Zoom and Facebook live streaming. Signed, Dr. Arnulfo Mascarenhas, SUC President 4. So, thank you so much, Dr. Gasparin, and thank you for sharing your thoughts and insight. I'm pretty sure that our participants learned a lot of things from your talk. So once again, let's give a resounding virtual applause to Dr. Gasparin.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate having this moment with all of you. I'm sure I'm gonna not only teach, but learn a lot from you. And thank you very much, okay, University, okay, Bicol University, for organizing such an important event, considering these relevant and challenging moments that we have been facing. So thank you so much for the innovation, considering this convention itself. Thank you very much for this event.
Thank you, Dr. Gasparin. We are truly blessed for having you here with us. And now, let's move forward to our next plenary speaker. So, as an educator,
go to opportunity with Dr. Gasparin.
Yes, Dr. Gasparin, may we request for a photo op with you, and may I also request all the participants to turn on their cameras for the photo opportunity.
Good morning po. We have 6 slides, so please hold your smiles. Okay, ready for the first slide? Smile. Next slide. Smile. Third slide. 1, 2, 3, smile. Fourth slide. Next, fifth slide. And the last slide. Your smiles. Okay, thank you very much.
Once again, thank you so much, Dr. Gasparin. ICT has been used to make mentoring relationships more available to students, especially in dealing with academic struggles in this time of the pandemic. The use of ICT in the classroom is designed to redefine education as it makes use of the new trends in the new normal. Its existence in the classroom is also a call for all of us teachers to continuously innovate in behalf of our students. With this, let us welcome our next speaker from New Delhi, India, Dr. Geeta Rahan. Ms. Geeta Rahan is the head of International Affairs at St. Mark's Senior Secondary Public School in Mirabad, New Delhi, India, an ardent believer of going beyond the four walls of a classroom. Ms. Geeta initiated the use of information communication technology in her classroom, even it was just an idea in many parts of the world. She encouraged her students to learn beyond classrooms and empower them to engage in a plethora of collaborative projects with students from all parts of the world. Together with their peers, her students have written books, designed magazines, and websites. They also have won multiple national and international awards. With an experience that spans more than a decade, Ms. Gira believes that cross-country education is crucial to prepare today's students with the mindsets needed for a global world. An educator who believes in connecting classrooms all across the globe, Ms. Gira has successfully initiated exchange programs in her schools, giving opportunities to students not only to travel, but also to stay with local families, thus learning about culture, tradition, and lifestyle of people around the world. Once again, let us welcome our next plenary speaker, Ms. Gira Rahan.
Greetings everyone. I'm Geeta Rajan from St. Mark's Senior Secondary Public School, Meerabad, New Delhi, India. I'm privileged and honored to be speaking at the International Conference on Education, Innovations and Community Development 2021, organized by Michael University Center for Teaching Excellence in collaboration with Extension Management Division and Office of Vice President for Research, Development and Extension. COVID-19 has seen innovations happening in the field of education all over the world. India was no exception. There were lots and lots of academic innovations happening in India too during this period. Today, I am going to talk about some of those academic innovations that happened in my country during COVID-19. COVID-19 has accelerated the use of technology in schools all over the world. The past 1.5 years has seen schools closing down, bringing education to a halt. But did it really bring education to a halt? No. All the schools across the world adopted technology. And that was a change, transformation in education. The schools not only use technology to teach, but also for assessment, for co-curricular activities, and for all the other purposes that serve in the holistic development of students. With schools gradually opening up in almost the entire world, the debate, especially in India, is whether to continue with online teaching or make it online or offline. The debate continues, and many schools in the urban India, they believe that hybrid teaching should take place. It's a heartening fact that schools in rural India also wish to take hybrid teaching as their way of education. So as we come to the end of the year 2021, online learning and teaching will continue to be an integral part of the education model in India. The best part of using technology for both students and teachers has been that everybody has been more creative. Whether you need to make models, whether you need to make projects, whether you need to collaborate and coordinate with people, technology has been a real boon. The project files, the assessment files, all have been made easy thanks to the use of technology. It is often said, rather it used to be said before the pandemic, that technology is a distraction. But during this time, people, I mean to say the students as well as the educators have found distractions have been beneficial. Distractions give opportunities to be more creative, and so students and educators have equally been more creative using technology and enhancing the classroom environment. It has been observed that schools and even corporate sectors believe that it's important to reskill and upskill their employees. Teachers for the past 1.5 years have gained more experience and ability, which has helped them in their personal growth. Training, advanced training, gaining knowledge and learning has helped them to be more competent. Hence, reskilling and upskilling are foremost in today's world. The picture says it all. The old curriculum that existed until the new education policy was announced in July 2020 spoke about students taking the same traditional streams of humanities, commerce, and science. But the new education policy gives students an opportunity to experiment with various subjects, various streams, hence giving them a plethora of opportunities to decide and think about what interests them and what career should they choose. And this gives an opportunity to educators to rethink. The education system needs to be rethought. The education policy that was introduced last year gives them a complete freedom to think and decide what is good for the students. Here, I quote Ms. Ivy, the Director General of UNESCO, that education has to be about learning to live with the planet under pressure. It must be about cultural literacy. It has to be based on equal dignity and respect, and together, living together, respecting the social, economic, and environmental dimensions for a sustainable development. Education is actually key to the global integrated framework of sustainable development goals. Quality basic education is the necessary foundation for learning throughout life when the world is rapidly changing. This is why we must think big and revision education in a changing world. And what are the consequences of the pandemic? The most important one is working from home. Working from home has resulted in educators and everybody saving on time and energy. It has been seen that data has also been better managed. One of the most easiest, simplest way of conducting classes, conducting sessions, and in fact engaging students in the best possible way is inviting accomplished people from different walks of work or walks of life to conduct lectures and webinars. Our school, St. Mark's, keeps engaging with students in the most appropriate way. We conduct career counseling sessions, we conduct grooming sessions, and several more, wherein we invite guest lecturers from all walks of life, and they conduct sessions which are truly rewarding for the students. We all travel a lot. The pandemic may not allow us to travel internationally, but within the city, we definitely are traveling. How does traveling become easier for us within the city? What do we consult? Google Maps. We can check which street we need to take, where we will encounter a lot of traffic, and how to reach the destination. This is where we have these new age technologies, machine learning and artificial intelligence. These help us to manipulate and maneuver our traveling comfortably. In fact, it is said that artificial intelligence may even replace human beings or human interaction in the coming future. That sounds scary, but that is definitely a possibility. If we need to rethink our education system, the methodology of imparted education, we definitely need to reevaluate the examination system. And educators around the world have indeed done so. The past 1.5 years, which now almost 2 years, we have been re-evaluating the entire examination system, and assessment has become too technical. Learning in a post-COVID world becomes more individualized and learner-driven. Today, the teacher in the classroom is just a facilitator, somebody who organizes learning material, organizes lessons, and makes it more friendly for the students to access. The students think, do, and write everything on their own, which is why education becomes much more fun and enriching for students, giving pleasure to the educators while they teach. Well, whatever I said until now was universal. All over the world, educators did everything that I spoke about. Be it use of technology in the classroom to teach, or to assess, or to even do co-curricular activities. Everybody in the world did the same. What happened in India? What were the innovations in the real sense? When it comes to innovations in India, the slide speaks for itself. Panchayat bhavans, mud walls and blackboards, these were real innovations by educators. And these came from rural India. About 3 dozen villages of Chotanagpur in eastern India, students of these villages attended special classes. They were called as Ratri Pathshalas, special evening classes. They were conducted in Panchayat bhavans, the community centers, with proper consent of the concerned authorities. Around 200 volunteers, mostly from colleges, universities, and even high school students came forward to conduct these sessions, and they didn't expect any remuneration. There were times, depending on the weather conditions, that the classes were conducted even in open fields and in mango groves, wherein the students could study properly, maintaining social distancing. Yet another case that was very innovative, that's mud walls as blackboards, when the principal and the teachers were wondering how to keep education alive, because they were all worried that if schools close down, if the children are not taught, then they would forget whatever they had been taught or have been taught until then. They came up with a novel idea. They went from house to house and turned the mud walls into blackboards. Every child could read and write as the picture shows clearly. Next comes this slide. Mohalla classes, loudspeakers on moving carts. Aren't they very innovative? How did this happen? The Mohalla classes started with just 10 children. Soon another 10 joined. And it was a rolling ball effect. They would move. number of students who joined, and soon there were 1,700 children in Mohalla classes across villages. The next innovative idea of loudspeakers and moving carts, this came in one small village in rural India in the northern part of the country. The teacher decided to install a loudspeaker on a cart and then went to the village wherein she started with the morning prayer followed by a lesson. This was very effective. The students didn't need to come out of their homes. They were there in their homes, but education was happening with the teacher announcing on the loudspeaker. Yet another head teacher followed the same example, and he decided that it would be turn by turn, with teachers going from one after the other and continuing with their classes, with their subjects, so that education just doesn't stop. Another very innovative way of teaching was to use the local cable room as a studio. This happened in Gujarat, in Western India. The principal of a high school decided to use the help of his cameraman and the local studio. What he did was, he converted the entire cable room into a studio and then asked his teachers to deliver lectures every day. A proper timetable was made and followed. 350 teachers delivered lectures every day, and it is said that it reached 70 or more villages in that area. Around 20,000 students benefited from these services, and the operators didn't charge a single buck. The next is again a very, very innovative story. And this perhaps is my personal favorite. This is Balaji Chandra from the state of Maharashtra. He connected with his students over conference calls and narrated stories to everyone. He converted lessons from geography and history into stories, and through the conference calls narrated them every morning. Then he would go to each and every student's house to see whether they had written down the stories properly. In the evening, he would ask them to narrate the stories back to him. What he says is that this way he could share knowledge. He could also make sure that listening, speaking, writing, and even sharing, also recording, all these skills were developed in his students. And why is this model my personal favorite? What started with this one educator, the same model has been replicated in around 20 districts of Maharashtra and other states. But not only that, even internationally, in Melbourne as well as in Tokyo, the model has been successfully replicated. We now come to one of the most innovative methodologies. This gentleman is a police inspector in the south of India. He's not a teacher. He is a police inspector, and of course he has some degree from the Harvard Institute, something on public administration. And when the first lockdown was announced in March 2020, he felt that the students will lose on education. So what he did was very novel. He used the children from his village as well as the nearby villages and mentored them to be the teachers. So you had high school students teaching the younger ones, the university students teaching the high school students, and this was a wonderful learning circle that he developed first in his own village, rather in his town. This was replicated, and soon there were so many other villagers who joined, and he had made lots of learning circles, and thus every student was benefiting from each other. What he wanted to do was not to let any child lose on education. And what he managed to do was he added more and more children into schooling. We have this very novel, innovative way of teaching, the radio school. And what did they do? The local radio, the local radio channel, they started broadcasting lessons. So instead of the regular programs that we have on radio stations, we had the teachers going to the radio stations and delivering lectures, which was broadcast all over the villages. And this happened in many parts, especially in central India, where teachers would deliver lectures using the radio station and aptly called as the radio school. Those were some of the amazing innovative stories from my country, India. Educators didn't stop. They didn't take a break. They continued so that education reaches every person, every student, every child all over the country. The country is vast, so you can well imagine the kind of hard work and effort that each educator would have put in. Coming to the apps that are shown on the slide, almost all these apps are used by educators all over the world, and India was no exception, is no exception. But in our school, we prefer using Microsoft Teams. We find it very convenient and very comfortable to use. Actually, the pandemic has reiterated the potential of ICT. It is important to use technology to make teaching more interesting, more interactive, more creative, as I had mentioned in almost all the slides. We used technology in our school even before the pandemic, which is why we have a good network of schools all over the world. And that was possible because we were using ICT extensively. But the pandemic pushed us further. It made us use technology in more creative ways. And now, almost all the teachers, around 150 or more of them who are there with us as our staff, and almost 4,000 students or more, they use technology without any difficulty. We have seen that now education is much more meaningful, much more creative, and we have learned tremendous skills, planning and managing education, data, everything so effectively that we have been able to do a good work throughout this period. My entire research, my entire presentation or whatever I spoke about were the result of all these journals, articles, websites. References are given here for everyone to read. I'm proud that not only in my school, my country too, education didn't take a break. There wasn't a stop at all. Educators continued using technology, and I'm sure that hybrid teaching will be here. Online teaching will continue, and that would enhance the classroom environment, giving ample scope for students to be more creative and more innovative. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gita. Okay, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and insights about the use of ICT in the classroom. And I encourage all the participants to ask questions for Dr. Gita. And I'm going to give you time typing your questions. So before I entertain questions, let me give first some of the salient takeaways that we can get from the discussion of Dr. Gita. The first one is technology in the classroom could actually eliminate the one-size-fits-all lecture from the classroom. And it's part of innovation, especially in the Philippine setting, that we use technology in the classroom because we have now changing demands in education, and we are dealing now with the new generation, and most of the generations are adept on the use of technology. And the next one, through the use of ICT, students can learn at their own pace. And that's what we want actually, to promote flexible learning for our students. And I guess the use of ICT would actually help us to make learning fun for our students, and they can also enjoy, and at the same time we consider their interest and time for learning. And the third one, ICT plays a vital role in the educational revolution in the customization of instruction. With the existence of technology, we cannot actually disregard it. All we have to do is to adjust with its existence and make use of it so that we can make learning interesting for our students. And the last one, if teachers are adept on the use of ICT, then it would be better and it would be easy for us to design personalized learning. Remember that we are here because we have our clients, our important clients, and those are our students. So we have to make sure that everything that we do should align on the needs, interests, and styles of our students. So let's promote ICT, and it's actually evident at the present situation. We are actually learning a lot of things. We are now using apps and different strategies to engage our students. And most of us are using Google Classroom, Zoom, and TikTok could also be used actually for teaching subjects like English subjects. So all we have to do is to innovate. Like what Dr. Gasparin have mentioned a while ago, that in Brazil, it's the product of research, and the feedback from the students are actually accepted by the educational system in Brazil. And the same thing here in India, as discussed by Dr. Gita, we have to make use of ICT in the classroom. So while waiting for the questions from our participants, let me give shout out to our viewers. We have here from Legazpi City, from Cabangan High School. Hello, my co-teachers there. And we also have from Bangkiruhan, and we have from Masbate, DepEd Masbate. And still we have viewers from abroad. We have from China, we have from Athens. So Dr. Gita, I guess our participants are still thinking of the best question for you. So let me ask first a question, Dr. Gita. So based on my observation, a lot of teachers are so afraid to embrace changes. And one example is on the use of ICT. So Dr. Gita, I just want to ask you on how would you encourage teachers to invest on the use of ICT in the classroom?
First of all, good morning. And thank you for inviting me here. And it was a pleasure listening to the speakers yesterday, especially my friends from Greece. And today it was so enlightening listening to Dr. Gasparin. I mean, it was such an enriching experience. So I also want to thank the organizers, especially Dr. Rebecca, who's been so patient, with me and my work and everything. So thank you so much. And also a special thank you to you, because you're handling the entire session so well. Yesterday, also the lady who was handling, please convey my best regards, because she was also wonderful. I watched the whole show. Okay, so I'm so sorry if you could repeat the question again, because in my thank you, I forgot that.
Yes, I'll repeat the question. As I have mentioned, Dr. Gita, that based on my observation, a lot of teachers are actually afraid in embracing the changes. And one example is on the use of technology. So I just want you to give a piece of advice or how are you going to encourage teachers to make use ICT in their classroom?
Well, that's a wonderful question, because as I said in my presentation, I started using technology when it wasn't much heard of. And, connecting students to students from other parts of the world or making classroom teaching interesting. I used it in all possible manner. But yes, I had stiff opposition from many educators because they felt, and that also I had mentioned in my presentation, that technology is a distraction. And keeping technology with you and using devices would actually encourage students to get into other websites which are not required, and they would not pay attention. But the pandemic has changed it all. Now every teacher, I think, is using technology. And as I said, hybrid teaching will continue. And for me, I'm happy that some part of my, the interest in technology and the use of technology that I wanted to do myself and encourage my fellow colleagues, pandemic has really made that easy. But I still feel that there are some who may not be very keen. Encouragement is required. And I would tell them that look at the way students were involved throughout the pandemic. I won't say that all students were involved, therefore definitely you will have all varieties of students in the class. But you are able to experiment more when you use technology. And experimentation is so important to keep them, engaged, because students don't have that kind of concentration that I might have had when I was young. So things have changed. And if you really want them to be involved, engaged in the class, you have to use technology, because that's where they find interest. Mere reading from a textbook or making them do things in the old traditional way, that definitely is not going to work. So my take, and as well as my encouragement, which has become easier because of the pandemic, technology definitely has to be instilled and integrated in teaching.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Geeta. And we have a question from the Zoom Live from James Malikay from Zamboanga City, Zamboanga Peninsula, Region 9 in the Philippines. So she asked, mentioned, good morning, may I ask, how had education technology impacted student learning in your country during this time of the pandemic? And follow-up question, Dr. Geeta, he wanted to know the challenges and best practices on how to keep students learning in this time of the pandemic.
Wonderful questions. We have our challenges. We are a huge country, and basic infrastructure is not there in so many places. But whatever innovations I picked up and I put them on the in the presentation were all those where basic infrastructure wasn't available. Yet the teachers were able to do such a wonderful job. I mean, devices are not in plenty, connection is not there, but then they were connected and they still managed. And that was because the educators walked that extra mile to reach students to make sure that education doesn't stop. And I live in the capital, but there have been times when we don't have proper connection, and the traffic is so much that there are times when things are a little slow. So we've had our own challenges, but we cannot compare those challenges to the ones who are living in the rural areas, where definitely everything is a challenge, but they've all done a wonderful job. I mean, these are just a few examples. There have been so many of them, and when we see those children doing well, it's so encouraging to be a teacher. I think that's the best profession that we can be in. And a number of people, I myself know of so many who do not have enough devices. You have one sibling using a device, the other sibling is not able to attend the class because he or she doesn't have an extra device. And that's where we stepped in. For example, in my own school, my own students took that up, and we had classes later in the evening, specially designed for students who didn't have extra devices. So if one sibling attended school in the regular time, the other sibling used to attend school in the later in the evening when the parents were back, when he would have an extra device. And then, my own students teaching them, and I would be the facilitator. I would just sit and monitor and see that everybody is doing his job, in the sense, in case I'm required to speak something. So whatever I taught in the morning, my student teachers in the evening to the ones who have those problems of accessing things because they don't have a device. So there have been these challenges, but we have sailed through. Slowly, gradually, we are opening up. Now schools have started opening, and we have the festival of Diwali coming up next week, after which I think schools would reopen if we don't have any surge in the cases, and we really are looking forward to that.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Geeta. So I am very happy that you are so passionate in promoting the use of ICT in your classroom. And I hope we can also consider your passion. Perhaps we can adapt your best practices on the use of technology in your classroom, because based on my observation, we are getting there on the use of ICT in the classroom. All of us are becoming adaptive on the use of ICT because we have now a lot of devices, we have a lot of technologies, we have now mobile phones. And those devices and technologies could actually be used to promote learning. Okay, and also we have comment, Dr. Geeta from Shira May Villanueva. She said that, thank you very much, Dr. Geeta. Indeed, innovation and the use of ICT in the teaching and learning process is very much needed in this time of the pandemic. And we have a follow-up question, Dr. Geeta, from Dr. Gasparim. He asked, in your opinion, how is digital literacy like in your country, considering the number of people using technologies, access, pedagogical use in your school?
Again, I think some part of it I have already answered. I mean, we are a huge country, huge population, many of them living in remote areas where there's no network, no devices, nothing called technology, but how did people reach? And I gave you all the examples in the presentation, which are from that part of the country where you don't have the infrastructure. And as I said, that even in my school, I had problems because, in the capital, and especially in my school, 25% of the seats are reserved for the economically backward community. So, which means there are a good number of students who belong to not financially very good, which means they really do not have enough devices. And I gave an example of one brother or sister attending the class and one not attending the class because there's no device. There have been cases where nobody could attend the class because the parents have just one device and they have taken it away because they are at work. So what to do? And that's where the innovation in our school happened, when we organized classes for them later in the evening. So it has been quite challenging for educators like us because we didn't have anything called me time or my time or free time because we were there. But then that's what, I mean, any crisis actually puts you in that kind of a situation where you need to think beyond yourself. So we had to do that. So access to technology, access to devices, everything was a challenge, but somehow we managed. I would not say that it has been 100%. Nothing can be foolproof, wonderful anywhere. but we did give it a try and we have been successful. And yes, technology, and especially during this pandemic, has made a shift to that kind of an education where it's not only marks that matter, because we are a society where we believe in grades. You need to do well. You have to get that, 100% and 99 and 98. It's not completely gone, but at least the government has made it a little flexible for us to, mark the students as per their personal, aptitude and all that, because we had varieties of co-curricular activities even during the pandemic virtually, and we could see the talent of the students. It's not necessary that he needs to be good in mathematics or economics or something. He may be good in something else, debating. So we can mark him on that basis. So that's one very positive that's come up because of the pandemic, that we are no more the grade kind of a society. We give them some flexibility. Of course, there's a long way to go. I mean, we still have to do a lot, but at least some change definitely has happened.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Geeta. So I just want to highlight, based on your response, that through the use of technology, the role of the teacher must also be there. Because according to Dr. Gaspari, the use of technology is actually double-sided. So the role of the teacher must always be present on the use of technology. And I like what you have said, that you have your schedule, meaning to say you care on the availability of the students, especially those who came from from poor families and they do not have time going to school. And that's actually one of your best practices on the use of technology. Yes. And speaking of technology, Dr. Geeta, some would actually have this problem that when I use technology in the classroom, there might be limited socialization among my students, because some teachers would actually believe that the face-to-face socialization is much better than the virtual socialization. So what's your take about that, Dr. Geeta?
I won't deny that face-to-face interaction is necessary, even for us. I mean, we do miss meeting friends, and we do miss socializing with them, sharing things with them, definitely. So children are children, they would definitely miss that. But it's not, I mean, again, a hybrid thing is better. I mean, somewhere virtual and somewhere face-to-face is definitely going to be good for anybody. So I would not say that this is better or that is better. Virtual has been fantastic, I must say, because we've been, I mean, our school has, again, as I mentioned, that we do a lot of exchange programs with so many partner schools. And the past 1.5 years, we've not been able to travel. But we did travel virtually, because we visited other schools' classrooms, made sure that, and in that, look at the advantage, because real traveling can happen only if you have that amount of money you need to pay for things. But virtual helped, because even the students who came from not very rich families could travel to the classrooms of other schools, and they were with the students, say Russian and Italian, and it was wonderful to see them interact, even if it was virtually, but it gave them a feel that even we can do it, even we can be part of this kind of a, a program. So that was something that I really enjoyed doing, connecting students and make sure that even students from not very rich backgrounds get an opportunity to interact with international friends.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Geeta. Indeed, you are right. that part of globalization is that we interact virtually, especially in this time of the pandemic. And it actually helped us. Through the use of technology, we can easily connect with our loved ones. But again, to all the participants, let us be reminded that the technology is there to support learning. So we have to be mindful that if it hinders learning, then there's something wrong with the use of technology. Remember our role as a teacher. We are here to facilitate and promote learning. And we have to be careful on the way we process information on the use of technology. Especially in this time of the pandemic, we have a lot of fake news. And I guess it's one of our roles as a teacher to stop the spread of fake news, and that's part of critical literacy. And I want it to be promoted in the Philippines. The same thing with how Dr. Gita promoted the use of ICT and Dr. Gasparin in promoting critical literacy. So our role as teacher, I guess, is really indispensable for us to produce great students. I guess, Dr. Gita, our participants are already satisfied with your thoughts shared to us. So at this juncture, Dr. Gita, we are happy to give you the certificate of commendation. So the citation reads, Bicol University, through Center for Teaching Excellence Extension Management Division, Office of the Vice President for Research, Development, and Extension, Legazpi City, awards the Certificate of Commendation to Dr. Gita Rahan, St. Mark's Senior Secondary Public School, Mirabag, New Delhi, India, in recognition of her noteworthy participation as plenary speaker on the topic Academic Innovations During the COVID-19 Pandemic, the Experience of India, during the 2021 International Conference on Education, Innovations, and Community Development, held on October 28 to 30, 2021 via Zoom in Facebook live streaming. Signed, Arnulfo M. Mascareñas, the president of Bicol University. So let's give Dr. Gita a resounding virtual applause, please. Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank you so much.
We are so blessed that you are part of this wonderful conference.
I think I should be saying that it was wonderful being here and getting connected with all of you, and once again, inviting me here. And it was nice speaking about all that, which I've not spoken, especially the classes that we used to conduct in the evening and all that. We do things, we don't speak. So you gave me an opportunity to speak about that. And thank you so much for everything.
Yes, Dr. Gita. So once again, thank you so much. And now we move forward with our agenda for this session. Another research presentations about teacher and teaching profession. And let me remind our participants. Yes, Dr. Gita, may we request for a photo opportunity? So may I request also the participants to turn on their cameras? And I guess we have 6 slides.
Okay po, first slide. Hold your smiles. Next slide. Okay po, next slide. Fourth slide. Fifth slide. And then the last slide. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, my dear participants. And just to give shout out, we have 263 participants from the Zoom meeting, and we have approximately 200 plus viewers from the FB live streaming. Thank you so much for staying with us, and I hope you are learning, and I hope that the learning you gain from this conference will also be used in your respective workplace. And I know that all teachers are so busy. And I'm so amazed that there are still teachers who are able to produce research papers. And now we're going to listen to their research findings, results, and discussion. So let's move forward with our agenda. So we're going to have 4 research presentations about teacher and the teaching profession. So let's start with the first research presentation under the category Teacher and Teaching Profession. So we have the first presenter is Christian C. Brillantes from the Department of Education, Division of Sarangani, titled Journey of Teacher of Last Mile Schools, a School Phenomenological Inquiry.
To our proactive adjudicators and to all of the participants of this forum, a pleasant morning. I am Christian Cedeño Brillantes of DepEd Sarangani Division, and of course together with me my co-author Janet C. Figueroa. And we are here today to present to you our research entitled Journey of Teachers. We have the background that consists of context and rationale, purpose of the study, and the objectives of the study. We also have the methods that consist of research design, research participants, research locale, and the research instruments. We also have the results and discussions that consist of thematic analysis and the discussion on entries, and the last part would be the summary of findings that consists of implications for practices and the concluding remarks. Before anything else, I just want to quote this Vignay from the study of Quijada and Oral of 2018. So teaching in far-flung area is not easy, especially when you do not know who you are with, the people, kind of pupils you will have, and the location of the school. But I am here today in this field because I am called to touch millions of young minds, though it took miles away from my home, and it sometimes exceeds my expenses. There are instances I visited a lending company to sustain my weekly allowances. Everything is paid off every time my pupils learn from me and when I see some changes in their behaviors. In the Department of Education, especially in the Division of Sarangani, there are last-mile school implementers in every municipality in the province. This impacted why the investigators are keen and interested in identifying through their plight of research endeavor. The investigators intends to discover the phenomenological experiences of teachers in the Sarangani Division, especially the East District of Municipality of Manumon. East District solely has 14 elementary schools wherein all of the schools are categorized as last-mile program implementers based on the criteria set forth, mainly established by at least 75% of IP learners. In effect, it is expected that a better understanding of the teachers and the treatment of the problems relative to the experienced phenomenon will be appropriately addressed. Last-mile schools, these are the schools who are handling multi-grade classes and a population of 8. For the teachers, they are only less than 5, and for the learners, they are only less than 100. They also experienced scarcity of MOOE, and 75% of learners belongs to IP group, and of course, they only have makeshift classroom buildings. This qualitative study aimed to know the challenges and the lived experiences of teachers teaching in the last mile schools. It also intends to determine the lived experiences of teachers in the last mile schools, to determine how they will cope with the challenge of their experiences, and to assess the insights that they can share. Participants in the study were mobile teachers working at last mile schools in the East Malungon District of Schools Division of Sarangani. There were 15 last mile school teachers who remained in the service for more than 3 years, teaching at rural schools. Teaching is a vocation as well as a career. To interact with students, a teacher should have a positive personality and attitudes such as passion, enthusiasm, humor, and patience, especially when the students are from diverse cultures. Teaching in a distant school is really difficult. To get to the station, teachers should have to endure a variety of unpleasant modes of transportation, including bangka and habal-habal, and even the employment of animals such as horses. Teachers put their life and the lives of their families on the line to pursue their chosen profession. For the research methods, it consists of the following. For the research design, it is a qualitative research, lived experiences, and a phenomenological study. For the research locale, East Malungon District has 23 schools and 14 schools of it are considered as last mile school implementers in the division of Sarangani. For the research participants, 15 teachers with very satisfactory performance rating for the past 3 years of RPMS IPCRF. And for the research instrument, it is a semi-structured interview, one-on-one interview, and a focus group discussion. For the results and discussions, through listening and analyzing, themes were created, supporting evidences from quotation and feedbacks, and 10 themes were created. For the first objectives, we have 5 themes, and the first of it is the accessibility of the school's location. So teacher participants manifested that they felt struggled and challenged in arriving to school, knowing the fact that they will be assigned to the schools who are really on top of the mountains. And it was supported by the study of Legazpi of 2012 and UMIL of 2015. For the second theme, by chance I'm teaching. So teacher participants manifested that teaching is not their first choice. Instead, they fall in love with it once they begin. And it was supported by the study of Siliguri of 2018. Half of my teacher participants also manifested that many teachers find that their passion for children attracts them to teaching, or that their own desire for learning draws them to teaching. And of course, it was supported by the study of Garrison and Leeson of 2004 and Carbonneau of 2008. For the third theme, teaching a work of art. So teacher participants manifested that happiness and excitement felt by the participant. It is important that schools keep the best teachers in the classroom because of our students' future are on the table. And of course, it was supported by the study of Liscandrelo of 2008 and Dam of 2019. For the fourth theme, preparedness in teaching, the power of preparation and planning. So teacher participants manifested that they are prepared, and when they are arrived at school, they are ready and trained. And of course, it was supported by the study of Hugger of 2000. Teacher participants also manifested that despite of having a bachelor's degree in education, they are not really ready and prepared for their teaching jobs. And of course, it was supported by the study of Casundra Granata of 2014. For the fifth theme, experience is the best teacher. So teacher participants manifested that teaching in a last mile school is difficult, but you will learn a lot about dealing with students from various cultures and norms. And of course, it was supported by Mid of 2010 and Goodlad of 2016. For the second objectives, there were 3 themes were created. First is a potpourri of approaches. So teacher participants manifested that teaching in rural areas is very difficult. You will see your students struggling in everyday life to get an education. Walk a kilometer just to get to school and going to school even without food just to learn. And of course, it was supported by the study of Jimmy of 2017. Next would be the culturally responsive teaching. So teacher participants manifested that multicultural education is not a mission to be completed, nor it is an aim to be reached. And of course, it was supported by the study of Elaine of 2019. And for the last theme for the second objectives, so teaching in last mile school is more fulfilling. So teacher participants manifested that teaching in the last mile school is more rewarding than teaching in lowland areas. They will make distinctions and they have worked in both low and high-lying environments. In a classroom environment, the teacher is the most influential figure. Of course, it was supported by the study of Campus of 2015. And for the third objectives, there were two themes were created. So quality education is possible. Teacher participants manifested that teachers allocated to the last mile school continue to provide quality instruction to students even though the school lacks of instructional resources. It was also supported by the study of Utbal of 2010. And for the last theme, the image of 21st century teachers of last mile schools. So teacher participants manifested that teachers of the last mile school ensures that they are eligible to be named as 21st century teachers. The growing concern over global inequities and the lack of justice has prompted new imperatives into educational practices in the 21st century. And of course, it was supported from the study of United Nations of 2016. Teachers and the Department of Education will all benefit from the findings of this study. So this qualitative study, along with the previous study on teachers' lived experiences at last mile schools or in rural places, backs up the premise that providing more assistance to all schools in depressed regions can improve education quality. Teachers assigned in far-flung schools are typically neophytes, but teacher participants serve 3 years up in teaching in this study. They see their present assignment as temporary and expect to be reassigned to a much better school in the future. Teacher participants' living experiences are compatible with those who other teachers in GIDA areas of the Philippines. In order to have quality instruction, teachers are forced to cut a portion of their salaries to fund classroom operations due to weak conditions of the school in the terms of teaching and learning services. To get to their workstations, teachers would take a less safe mode of transportation and walk kilometers. And more support for rural classrooms, students, and the people they serve are important. The best choice is to hire a teacher from the village where the school is located, especially because accessibility to these stations is limited. And for the final thoughts, in this research, most teachers at last mile school implementers in the East Malungun district in the schools division of Sarangani sought for an additional help from the government and to the Department of Education itself. So districts, schools, and educators would benefit from the greater research in the aforementioned areas, as well as greater support and the strategic teaching pedagogies in order to deepen student learning and prepare kids for the careers that they want.
We now have the research of Roldan C. Cabilis titled Experiences and Philosophies, Basis for Life Skills Guide for Beginning Teachers.
This study produced a life skills guide for beginning teachers, anchored on the life history and philosophies of the key informants from the 3 schools of the Department of Education, Schools Division Office of Albay. Specifically, it answered the following questions. What is the life history of beginning junior high school teachers in terms of personal circumstances, professional experiences, aims and aspirations in life, sources of joy and feeling of success, challenges and concerns, and views on teaching? What life skills have they demonstrated in terms of teaching, transportation and living condition, establishing interpersonal relations, and adapting to the community? What educational philosophies are reflected in the life history and life skills of teachers? What life skills guide for beginning teachers may be proposed, taking into account the lived experiences, life skills, and educational philosophies of identified teachers? This is qualitative phenomenological research that recorded the lived experiences of the key informants through in-depth interviews and participant observation of the key informants. This study selected Itaran National High School as the study locale for the rural area, Marshall Orenola Memorial School for the urban area, and Rapu-Rapu National High School for the coastal area. These schools were selected because they have the highest number of deployed junior high school teachers. The central objective of this research is to produce a life skills guide for beginning teachers to orient them to local realities in rural, urban, and coastal schools, to provide them with a big picture of the place and equip them with the necessary skills they need to survive teaching in the area and eventually perform their job effectively and efficiently. This guide is an offshoot of the key informant's life circumstances, philosophies, and demonstrated skills drawn from a series of interviews and participant observation of the researcher in the study locales. Because of the global health crisis brought about by the COVID-19, virtual platforms such as Facebook Messenger, Google Meet, Zoom application, and phone calls were used to gather the data aside from the face-to-face interviews because of the current pandemic. Based on the analysis made in this study, the following are the results and findings. Generally, the life history of teachers reflects grit and resilience, along with their external and internal motivations in their choices, particularly in their professional development. In terms of personal circumstances, the key informants possess a genuine and deep love for family, which includes not simply the spouses and children, parents and siblings, but also grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, godparents, and other extended relatives. To them, family is a source of personal identity and the source of emotion and material support, and the person's main commitment and responsibility. Others are left with no choice but to take the path of the teaching profession because it is the source of their income, their bread and butter. For them, teaching sustains their daily needs and becomes the foundation of their being. Because of it, they were able to finish their degree and provide their children quality education from the wage they get in teaching. Their present line of thinking is influenced by their previous experiences from childhood to this time. It is usually influenced by several incidents in their lives, including culture, people, and environment that led them to their present circumstance. Nonetheless, Given this ideology, they view life as a situation that is full of good memories and challenging moments, which for them is natural because it makes life meaningful. The COVID-19 pandemic has made them feel immensely apprehensive because the landscape of education has likewise drastically changed, particularly the mode of delivery of instruction in the Department of Education. As of this moment, they are still transitioning from traditional to distance learning. Thus, they need to be continuously capacitated with this kind of modality, coupled with the availability of appropriate technology in the school. In terms of professional experiences, their choice of the teaching profession is motivated by their personal circumstances. Being a public teacher in a government institution will provide them a comfortable life and achieve their aims and aspirations in life and become stable. For them, teaching is a profession where one needs to endure many sacrifices because it consumes their personal time attending to the many concerns even at home. However, their commitment to teaching remains. The new normal brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic has challenged most of them, especially in adjusting particularly on the use of technology for distance learning. They find difficulty in navigating platforms for teaching, including printing modules for remote learners, sorting out, distribution, and retrieval. In terms of aims and aspirations in life, the key informants' aims and aspirations were influenced by their personal and professional experiences. They aim to uplift their family's condition and aspire for the betterment of their family, and they aspire for the success of their family members to attain a comfortable and secure life later on. They relate their aims and aspirations towards work, particularly on being promoted to a higher rank or position. Gaining a higher rank for them will provide them a higher compensation for them to comfortably provide the basic needs of their family. Their feeling of success is reflected in their personal and professional achievements as a result of their hard work and dedication in teaching. Success for them is the sense of being happy, which they get from their environment and people they have interacted with, as well as becoming somebody who has fulfilled their aims and aspirations. Furthermore, obtaining a higher educational attainment for them is a way to get promoted to the teaching profession, as well as for updating themselves with the new pedagogical trends while getting a higher compensation. Their sources of joy and feeling of success are driven by their personal and professional experiences in life. Similar to their personal circumstance, family is one of their sources of joy, particularly their bonding moments. During the pandemic, the help extended by their family members in doing work-related documents, such as sorting out and printing of modules to be distributed to the learners, also gives them happiness. Moreover, doing recreational activities like swimming, hiking, watching movies also releases stress and diverts them from mental disturbance, which may lead to depression. Their light and easygoing relationship with colleagues also strengthens their interpersonal relationship, which is helpful in carrying out their duties and responsibilities as teachers. Meanwhile, they feel successful when they see their students achieve their dreams or have become the person they wanted to be. Because of this, they become intrinsically motivated in inspiring more learners to continue creating a legacy. The key informants relate their challenges and concerns along with personal circumstances and professional experiences. The main concern of teachers in the rural, urban, and coastal schools is the lack of preparation in the middle of the pandemic. They were caught unprepared on how to transition to the new normal that requires technological skills among teachers, like navigating learning management system as a platform in delivering their lessons. Moreover, lack of school facilities, poor access to the internet, improper behavior, the passivity of students in learning across subjects, and poor reading comprehension have been perennial concerns of every school. Their personal and professional circumstances are contributory factors to their views in teaching. They view teaching as a big responsibility to fulfill because there are many challenges in it. Most of their time is devoted to teaching, even when they are already at home, particularly during the pandemic because there are many deliverables expected of them. Thus, commitment to teaching is necessary, including love and passion for teaching, to endure the challenges that come along. Furthermore, they view it as a noble profession, as it hones many professionals who are part of nation building. They see it as a reward when their students become self-fulfilled and regulated, and are now fully independent in their lives. They believe that values should be strongly instilled hand in hand with learning to holistically develop a child, especially that the virtual learning time is bombarded with many explorations which may lead learners towards improper direction. In particular, the common demonstrated life skills of teacher participants in rural, urban, and coastal areas are adaptability, flexibility, good communication, interpersonal or social skills, pedagogical skill, and practicality. Teacher participants in the rural and urban areas are digitally literate, and competitiveness was mainly reflected in the urban areas. On the other hand, financial literacy is strongly reflected among the teacher participants from the rural and coastal areas, probably because there are few to none distractions which may tempt them to spend. Among urban teachers, it was noted that they are susceptible from spending their money because they are surrounded with commercial establishments and entertainment centers. Specifically, based on the life history and demonstrated life skills, teachers in the rural, urban, and coastal areas reflect essentialist, humanistic, existentialist, pragmatist, progressivist, reconstructionist, constructivist, idealist, behaviorist, and perennial philosophies. Moreover, it was significantly observed that selected teacher participants in the rural and coastal also exhibit positivism that is influenced by their field of expertise, which is mathematics and science. These educational philosophies of teachers strengthen their coping mechanisms as well as the teaching competence. The developed Life Skills Guide is based on the lived experiences of teachers, specifically targeting the 3 areas of deployment of beginning teachers. The Life Skills Guide for beginning teachers is proposed to help the beginning teachers cope with the actual realities of their teaching assignments. The contents reflect the realities that teachers face as culled from their life history, demonstrated life skills, and educational philosophies. The following recommendations were derived based on the aforementioned findings and conclusions.
We now have another research titled Enriching the English Education Through Mainstreaming of Global Citizenship Education in the Elementary Level by Sixto O. Orzales from Bicol University.
Good day. This is Sixto O. Orzales from the BU College of Education, and I will be presenting the outcome of my study entitled Enriching the English Curriculum Through the Mainstreaming of Global Citizenship in BUCE ILS Elementary Department under Dr. Rebecca Rosario O. Bercasio. This presentation includes a brief background of the study, objectives, methodology, results and discussion, conclusion, and recommendations, in that order. This study is focused on the use of global citizenship education in enriching the English lessons in the elementary level and determining the effectiveness of the proposed phenomenon-based learning interventions when it comes to learners' awareness and how they make sense of the world. Additionally, global citizenship education is necessary because of the interconnected and independent nature of the current world. UNESCO explains that we are linked as never before to other people on every continent, socially and culturally through the media. Specifically, this study aimed to achieve the following objectives. 1. Assess the proposed phenomenon-based learning interventions which integrates global citizenship considering appropriateness for integration, relevance to the curriculum, flexibility of integration, and significance of the theme. 2. Determine effectiveness of the phenomenon-based learning interventions. And lastly, determine the insights and feedbacks of teachers involved in the phenomenon-based learning. This study in general adopted the UNESCO framework, which provides the domains of learning and the corresponding key learning outcomes. Under each key learning outcome are the key learners' attributes, topics, and objectives. This specifically guided the developers in choosing topics or phenomena as springboard for the learning interventions. Similarly, this also served as guide in assessing integration of global citizenship in the curriculum as well as in the instructional practices of teachers in English who are handling elementary pupils. For the materials and methodology, this study made use both of quantitative and qualitative approaches. Specifically, it used the descriptive evaluative method of research to describe and assess the instructional practices on global citizenship in the elementary level of BUCE ILS. Rubrics were developed and validated by the jurors. Meanwhile, the result of the objective and self-rated pre-test and post-test was employed in order to assess the effectiveness of phenomenon-based learning interventions. Moreover, interviews and reflection writing were conducted in the course of the learning sessions. Finally, in determining the insights and feedbacks of teachers involved, recording of their daily reflection at the end of every lesson was used as the primary basis. Here are the tables that show the results of objective number 1. First, we have the appropriateness of the lesson, relevance to the curriculum, flexibility for integration, and significance of the theme. These results reveal that the integration of phenomenon-based instruction for the elementary in the 10 lessons used is highly evident. It can be gleaned that the GSED topics and phenomena were carefully selected to make it appropriate for integration, thus making it relevant to the curriculum and flexible for integration. The selected GSED themes for the 10 lessons scored highly when it comes to their significance for integration. With an average mean of 2.85, it can be further drawn that the lessons are highly phenomenon-based and are integrated with GSED concepts. Based on the jurors' comments, GSED integration was evident in every lesson. The activities prepared by the teacher are relevant and meaningful. The lessons also promote critical thinking and creativity, hence making the sessions more engaging to the pupils. Although GSED integration was used, the teacher remained faithful and did not deviate from the curriculum guide. Moreover, it was also observed that objectives were specific and clearly stated. However, uncited references and time constraints were accentuated as points for improvement in some lessons. Effectiveness of the phenomenon-based learning interventions. The table shows that the grade 6 pupils who took the self-rated pre-test and post-test on GSED agreed moderately that they possess the GSED competencies as a result of having been exposed to the use of phenomenon-based learning intervention in the classroom. These results further illustrate that the utilization and integration of GSED competencies along the cognitive, social, emotional, and behavioral aspects in the lessons was effective, as shown by the increase in the mean for all GSED competencies in the results of the students' rating. This next table indicates that the respondents have become highly knowledgeable of GSED phenomena in most of the indicators after attending the 10 learning sessions. A significant change from not knowledgeable to highly knowledgeable has been achieved when it comes to the use of EJK with a mean of 1.64 to 2.36. Similarly, knowledge on political crisis and people power has also increased. Knowledge on the Bayanihan phenomenon has highly increased from 0.96 to 1.48. Along the learning session, the pupils have not fully understood that the phenomenon means not only getting involved to the workforce just because directed, but is self-initiated and with willingness to do the cause, the real context of Bayanihan. This minimal increase may be attributed to time constraint in the implementation of the lesson. Table 5 shows the pupils' insights based on their post-intervention reflective essay. These excerpts from their essays indicate a greater sense of awareness and understanding on issues affecting the world. In the cognitive level, the pupils articulated the issues by naming or describing them. In the socio-emotional level, they were able to write how global issues affected them and their respective local communities. Under the behavioral level, pupils suggested some ways on how they can contribute to hasten the solution of domestic and global problems. This last table shows the positive impact of phenomenon-based learning on the learners and the teacher as well. It can be deduced from their responses that learning GCED concepts through phenomenal-based lessons can enhance awareness and active citizenship. In summary, the following are the conclusions. The proposed phenomenon-based interventions used were highly appropriate, relevant, flexible, and significant as observed by the jurors, teacher, researcher, and pupils, all of whom took part in the implementation of the lessons. Given the results of the assessments conducted, the phenomenon-based learning interventions are effective in teaching lessons with global citizenship education. However, it needs further refinement and repackaging to increase its effectiveness. The insights and feedback of teachers and students involved in the study showed the positive impact of phenomenon-based learning on the learners and the teacher. With the following conclusions, the following recommendations are made. The university's Laboratory School for Elementary adopt the use of phenomenon-based learning to integrate GCED concepts in English lessons. The 10 lessons used for this study may be used as models in making GCED part of the elementary English curriculum. The university should enhance or enrich existing materials or models for phenomenon-based lessons and GCED integration. The university may develop lessons in English that can be integrated with GCED concepts based on the feedbacks and insights gathered in this study. At this point, I would like to thank the BU-RDMD, the BU College of Education, and the Center for Teaching Excellence under the leadership of Dr. Rebecca Rosario Bercasio, and of course, the GCED team. Thank you.
We now have the research presentation of Dr. Maria Jocelyn J. Paje titled Employment Status and Assessment of Graduate Program of Management and Professional Teacher Education Department, Bicol University College of Education.
Employment Status and Assessment of Graduate Program of Management and Professional Teacher Education Department, Bicol University College of Education. This research is an assessment of the graduate programs lodged in the Management and Professional Education Department of Bicol University College of Education. To assess the graduate programs, we have to consider the employment of graduates of these three programs: the Doctor of Education and Educational Leadership and Management, Doctor of Philosophy major in Educational Foundations, and Master of Arts in Leadership and Management. One of the measures of performance of the state universities and colleges is the employability of its graduate as per DBM CHED Joint Circular No. 1 Series of 2016. This is measured by identifying the percentage of graduates employed after graduation. So this research has the following objectives: determine the personal and professional benefits derived from completion of the graduate degree program, describe the extent to which the competencies developed through the graduate studies are utilized along human relations, leadership and management, research skills, and the third is to gather feedback from peers, supervisor, students of the changes brought about by the graduates' completion of the degree program to the management of school and our classroom. The research study used descriptive method in order to recognize and corroborate the responses of the respondents in the survey questionnaire developed by CHED, personal interviews, phone interviews, and online survey conducted. The secondary data from Bicol University Graduate School Registrar's Office were used also to validate the profile of the graduates. The respondents is 50 graduate students of BUGS. For the results in discussion number 1, frequency distribution of the graduate respondents of this program, as the study mentioned in methodology, the total number of 50 respondents were selected to carry out the study. Table 1 shows the majority of respondents graduated in 2015. It indicates further that the graduates came from EDDLM and MAELM courses and PhDEF. Responses by gender and civil status were not considered as key variables in sampling of graduates in this study. However, information on respondents by gender and civil status is presented here to give insightful understanding of respondents to the study by these variables. Among the 50 of the traced graduates, 30 were female and 20 were male as shown in Table 2. Apart from showing a possible distribution of sampling by civil status and gender, this information could highlight the attractiveness of inclination in the education by groups in the community. Female respondents in Table 3, particularly those graduate of EDD, exceeded the male respondents in all courses. Mainstream of the respondents in MAELM, EDD, and PhDEF are female. For discussion 2 on the reasons for pursuing the graduate degree, with regards to the reasons of graduates for pursuing their graduate studies, Table 4 reveals strong passion for profession as rank 1, followed by prospect for career advancement, which rank 2, and status of prestige of the profession, affordable for the family, prospect of attractive compensation, and inspired by role models as third and fourth in this order. Expectedly, it can be concluded that while economic is the major reason, the graduates are also looking into the ultimate aim why they are in teaching profession, and that is their strong passion for teaching position. For the rate of contribution of BAGS program for personal and professional growth, Table 5 showed the contribution of BAGS programs to personal and professional growth. Generally, academic profession, learning efficiency, people skills, problem-solving skills, meeting present and future professional needs, critical thinking skills, salary improvement and promotion, and personality development mark very high rating results in the rating for the contribution of BAGS program study. Seemingly, on the opportunities abroad, it represents low result mean of 2.44, which is interpreted as fair. Respondents aim to learn new learnings would be the greatest way to fulfill their aspiration and dreams. Research capability, communication skills, information technology skills, exposure to local community, and international with the field of specialization and opportunities abroad, depict only high rating for the contribution of BAGS program study. In an informal interview conducted, the respondents admitted that their personal growth was enhanced, which provided them additional knowledge, challenged themselves academically in terms of experience, accomplished great things, and earned respect and recognition they deserve as well. For discussion number 4, to the extent of competencies developed through the programs of BAGS, in Table 6, it validated the extent of competencies of graduate students developed through the programs of BAGS in terms of 3 components: human relation, leadership and management, and research skills. It presents the extent of competencies of the skills in their current employment with an overall mean of 4.25. It shows that all of these skills are applicable to a very high extent of their nature of work. This also means that the skills of human relation, leadership and management, and research are useful and helpful, relevant to their current employment. Apparently, a balanced perspective results were achieved with a representation from its indicator. In human relation, communication, empathy, stress management, and conflict resolution exhibits an overall rating of very high, which is 4.42 as to the extent of competence developed through the BAGS program. For leadership and management, seemingly, engagement, employee growth, training fairness, respect for others, problems and decision-making, and initiative, risk-taking revealed a very high rating of 4.33 as well. More specifically on the issue on leadership and management, this context as a working concept and development measure remained too realistic to be particularly meaningful. On the research skills, finally, entrepreneurial skill, technical knowledge, job-specific computer skills, and writing skills depicts a very high rating of 4.01 on the extent of competencies developed through the programs of BAGS. For discussion number 5, and this is the last objective as to the feedback from peers, supervisors, and students about the changes developed by the graduates' completion of the degree. From the feedback from the supervisor, completed graduate degree in Bicol University Graduate School provided the respondents the ability to be more flexible in demonstrating planning according to instructional needs. Utilize effective examples and illustrations presented, learning content in a logical sequential order, and practice evaluative feedback to determine level skills acquisition. Encourages participation from all students and higher order techniques to promote critical thinking skills of the students. Encouraged community involvement with the school and provided good climate which opens communication between teachers and parents and other stakeholders with best interest. And finally, strive to stay informed regarding policies and regulations and exercise responsibility for student management. For the feedback from peers, peer respondents confirm the improvements in teaching skills, applying different theories learned, manifesting results of the student performance in the classroom. They have a better chance to promotion that will surely increase their job stability and with a higher position and higher salary, of course. This followed protocols in carrying the responsibilities in the workplace. And finally, graduates study hone their skills to be the proficient persons in their profession. For students' feedback, scheduled learning, students profess that their teachers are good even before they were not yet the holder of the graduate degree. However, a great changes happened when they completed graduate degree. More concerned about the pupils in terms of discipline and well-being, the teacher responded to resist the temptation of inflicting emotional stress. Instead, take a walk and comes back relaxed and calm. Schedule learning time according to policy for the subject area, started classes on time, used accurate learning time, and gave clear and concise directions. Monitored student progress through a variety of appropriate evaluation techniques, made opportunities possible to discuss student progress, and finally exercise responsibility for student management throughout the entire school. Discreet and handling confidential information regarding students. For my conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, with the objectives, the study concluded that most graduates of Bicol University's graduate schools from 2010 to 2015 are gainfully employed locally with permanent status and are holding professional and managerial functions. It can be concluded that the ultimate reason for enrolling the graduate study is the strong passion for their profession. The BAGS program courses have contributed much to the graduates' personal and professional advancement. Human relations, leadership and management, and research skills are likewise found very relevant to their respective work with a very high result. And lastly, as regard feedback from supervisor, peers, and students of the changes developed by the completion of the graduate degree program, it revealed that There were great changes in the respondents as evaluated by their supervisors, their peers, and the students. Thank you so much for listening and good morning everyone. That ends my presentation. I am now ready to for your suggestions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to our research presenters, Chris C. Brillantes from DepEd Division of Sarangani, Dr. Roldan C. Cabiles from Bicol University Open University Legazpi City, and Sir Sixto O. Orzales from Bicol University, and also to Dr. Maria Jocelyn J. Paje. Thank you so much for presenting your research papers. Indeed, the research presentations enabled us to revisit the basic concepts that we can apply in our teaching strategies and in education as a whole, especially in this time of the pandemic. The educational implications of your research presented help us to innovate learning strategies and activities for our students, and at the same time, it gave us an opportunity to innovate in the academe as a whole. Moreover, the theoretical perspectives in the research papers gave us an idea to search for possible research topics that are timely, relevant, and can actually contribute for the betterment of our community. And I guess the research presenters are here with us, and they are now ready for your questions coming from our participants. So while they are thinking for their questions, I just have one question for all the research presenters. I just want to know, what do you think is the greatest contribution of your research in the field of education, and what piece of advice that you would like to give to novice researchers who would also like to gain success in research? So I guess Sir Roldan is here with us. So perhaps we can start with Sir Roldan. Yes, Sir Roldan. So Sir Roldan is preparing for his answer, and he's actually muted.
Hi.
Okay.
Thank you, Sir Carlos, for the question. The very purpose of my research is actually to develop this life skills guide for beginning teachers, so that it can be integrated in the teacher induction program of the Department of Education. And this can also be used by the private sectors. It contains all the coping mechanisms if ever the novice teacher will be assigned in the rural, urban, or coastal area. So they will already be oriented on what they're going to do, how are they going to accommodate the culture of the place.
Thank you so much, Sir Roldan. And I have witnessed your sacrifices during your data gathering. And what piece of advice can you give to novice researchers who would also like to have the same research as yours?
All right. First, research is difficult, but it is fulfilling. We anticipate, of course, challenges along the way, particularly in the data gathering of our paper. Sometimes we are uncertain, but it's part of the learning process. We just try and just give our best shot and do our best so that we will be able to come up with a very good output of our research. And let's remember that research should not be just a requirement, but it should teach us to become persons who are self-regulated and self-fulfilled.
Thank you so much, Sir Roldan. And let's have now Sir Christian C. Brillantes. So the same question. What do you think is the greatest contribution of your research?
Hello, can you hear me, sir? Loud and clear?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, so the implication of my study to the Department of Education, this could be an eye-opener to our department heads and to the heads of the Department of Education, because of this study, it may serve as an uh, it will give more support to the education system, especially to the schools who are in the rural places, to have support. And yeah, we are asking for the support from the Department of Education that in a last mile school, because I am a last mile school teacher, and I am assigned in a depressed area. So if we have more support from the Department of Education, we can promote and we can sustain the basic education, or the basic education where the Department of Education is really aiming for it. So that's it.
Thank you so much, Sir Christian. And just a follow-up question. I have read from your presentation that some of the teachers were actually forced to give a portion of their salary. So may I know, are you one of those teachers who are
Yes, sir.
actually giving a portion of money? And what piece of advice can you give to our novice teachers? Perhaps they might be shocked that this is my salary and I'm going to give a portion of it to
Yes.
others.
Yes, sir. I also cut my salaries just to provide and to sustain the necessity of my learners. And even a single for the learners, even single crayons they cannot buy, they cannot afford of buying it. So as a teacher, parang it's your obligation as a second parent to provide and to sustain the basic education or quality of your learners. So you have no choice but to provide them. You are the one who give them you are the one who will give materials to them just to have the best education that that they could have. And the piece of advice I can give is journey is not easy, especially when you are conducting research. But if you are really striving hard and you are aiming for the best result, just go for it, and success will come in its way. So that's it.
Thank you so much. You are an excellent teacher, Sir Christian.
Thank you.
And now let's have Sir Sixto Orzales. So the same question, sir. Sir, I guess you're on mute, sir.
Yes, thank you very much, Sir Carlos. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
For the first question, I hope that through my study, teachers will have, a wide perspective in terms of innovation. Okay. Sorry for that. No. Okay. So. Okay. So I hope that through my research, teachers will now have an idea that innovation is something that we should do really in the classroom, and that I have to remind them that it begins with when the eyes notice. So the answer to that question is actually, one of the answers is just said, global citizenship education, because we are in such an exciting world, but we are challenged with speed and technology. So let us make use of this technology as our tool in making our classroom a more globally competitive classroom, in terms of the innovations that we implement, in terms of the strategies that we use. And let us make our students realize that they are not just citizens of the Philippines, but they are citizens of the world. So whatever is happening globally, we are very much affected of that. So through GCED or Global Citizenship Education, our students will learn more, and they will realize that they can do something for the world. And what was the last question, Sir Carlos, about research?
Just a piece of advice to our novice researchers who would also like to gain success in research.
Okay, that is to never give up. No, research is not a walk in the park. Okay, it's not an easy job. So you will be encountering challenges and problems in the process. So I hope that I just go on and never give up on whatever your goal is, that the goal that you would like to attain or to achieve in your study. Okay, so that is my piece of advice because research is not really that easy.
Thank you so much, Sir Sikto. And I actually witnessed how you worked hard in preparing students for globalization. And that is why we miss you in the Department of Education. But I know you are happy at Bicol University because from a winning coach, you are now a research enthusiast. Congratulations, Sir Sixto. We now have Dr. Jocelyn Pahe. Ma'am, you're on mute. No, Ma'am Pahe, please click the unmute button. Yeah, that's
Okay.
it.
Good noon, everyone. You know, the first question is the benefits derived from my study. By completing and finishing the accredited programs of BAGS, the Bicol University Graduate School, your degree is most likely to be better received and trusted by employers and other educational institutions. So thereby creating more employment opportunities and securing higher income likewise. So developing problem and solving skills like also and providing eventually a happy life. Giving back to the community what we have learned and bridging the borders in the community. So with that, of course, the advantages of the university, bringing those learnings to the society. The university, of course, are economic engines. No, university are hotbeds of innovation and entrepreneur. It could be change the face of the society, and it will also attract global talent and eventually improves lives. Sir Carlos, the next question, please, or the next.
Thank you so much. Just a piece of advice, ma'am, to those teachers or perhaps students who would like to engage in research.
Okay, so how would I encourage them to give every access to services. I would like to promote the view that research success is to benefit is the benefit of everyone. Knowledge is an inclusive good and not an exclusive good. So providing a research environment with culture of integrity based on good governance, best practice and support for the development of the researchers. Development means to include clear policies, practices, suitable learning, training, mentoring, opportunities, and support. The very big support to the researchers. Thank you so much, Sir Kalun.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Jocelyn. And I remember our subject, academic governance. And because of your wisdom, ma'am, I was inspired to continue doing good in my workplace. So thank you so much for giving your wisdom and knowledge to all the participants here. So once again, let's give a virtual applause to our great research presenters. And at this juncture, we will award the Certificate of Commendation to our research presenters. So may I request our certificate to be flashed on the screen? So the Certificate of Commendation reads, Republic of the Philippines, Bicol University through Center for Teaching Excellence, Extension Management Division, and Office of the Vice President for Research Development and Extension, Legazpi City. The Certificate of Commendation is awarded to Christian C. Brillantes in recognition of his noteworthy participation as presenter of the research paper titled Journey of Teacher of Last Mile Schools, a School Phenomenological Inquiry during the 2021 International Conference on Education, Innovation, and Community Development, held on October 28 to 30, 2021 via Zoom and Facebook live streaming. Signed, Arnulfo M. Mascareñas, SUC President 4. congratulations, Sir Christian, and the same certificate is also awarded to Dr. Roldan C. Cabilis. And we also have the same certificate to Sir Sixto O. Orzales. And name certificate to Maria Jocelyn J. Paje. So congratulations for a job well done. And I hope we can produce more researchers so that we can continuously innovate for our students and we can revolutionize the Philippine education. All of you are needed to gain revolution in education. So thank you so much to our research presenters, and I hope that all of us gained something after listening to our highly esteemed speakers and research presenters. So before I end this morning session, let us be reminded that the afternoon session will cover 2 plenary talks, and there will be research presentations about curriculum and innovation. I hope you stay with us until this afternoon, and I hope that you will stay participating and at the same time learning with all of us. And this has been your host, Carlos Vinueles from DepEd Legazpi City Division. See you all this afternoon.